them all what I'm made up. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take a stack of sources, pull out the key insights, and basically give you a quick way to get informed.
Yeah, without feeling overwhelmed by, everything out there.
Exactly. So today we're diving into Washington, D.C., specifically the atmosphere right before the 2025 White House Correspondents Association dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Our main source is a really interesting New York Times piece from April 26th, 2025.
Right, and for anyone listening who isn't super familiar with this dinner, it's usually a pretty big deal, right?
Totally. Journalists, politicians, usually a comedian roasting everyone. It's this kind of symbolic thing between the press and the people in power.
A way to hold power accountable, sometimes with a laugh, and it's often seen as, well, a sign of basically healthy relationship-ish.
But this year, it felt different. We know the Trump administration decided not to attend.
And the whole comedy roast part was toned down, too.
So the big question we're digging into from this NYT piece is, what was the actual vibe like in the days leading up to this change dinner?
What can all those pre-parties tell us about how things are shifting between the media and politics, like right now?
Okay, first off, the sheer number of events. The article paints a picture of wall-to-wall parties.
Seriously, it sounds like from morning till midnight.
Yeah.
Breakfasts, brunches, cocktails.
Non-stop. And Tammy Haddad, who's seen the scene for years, apparently said there seemed to be even more parties this time.
Which is interesting, right? You might expect fewer without the administration there.
Her theory, she said something like, politics have taken over media.
Politics taking over media?
Yeah, her idea was that this created more room for people with strong political opinions to become, prominent voices, leading to more events.
That's a take. If politics has taken over media, it makes you wonder, does that mean more fragmentation?
Like events catering to specific political bubbles.
Maybe. Or just changing how news gets discussed and maybe even gathered. It definitely points to a shift away from the old model.
And speaking of shifts, the celebrity factor, it seemed way down compared to previous years.
Yeah, the article mentions Colin Jost and Scarlett Johansson were there last year. That's proper Hollywood A-list.
This year. The biggest name mentioned in that sort of stop you in the street fame category was Jason Isaacs.
From the White Lotus, yeah. He was at the United Talent Agency party.
But it wasn't just about him being there, was it? The article points out why he was there.
Exactly. He was actually lobbying, wasn't he?
Yep.
For the National Endowment for the Arts.
Right. And he apparently said something like, no one quite knows what their fate is going to be.
Which feels pretty resonant. You can draw a line from the uncertainty of, say, a TV show's future.
To the uncertainty maybe felt by the press corps itself, facing the start of the Trump administration.
It really captures that feeling of, well, not knowing what's next. A broader uncertainty.
Okay, this is kind of fun. Bill Nye, the science guy. Yeah. He was seemingly everywhere.
Yeah. Popping up all over the place.
The National Portrait Gallery. A party by semaphore.
Apparently wearing his Presidential Medal of Freedom at one point while talking about potential NASA cuts.
He lives in Georgetown, apparently, and the piece describes him as really friendly, advocating for science.
His presence is sort of a recurring motif through these events, isn't it?
Not a constant reference point.
Yeah. And because he's generally outside the day-to-day political fighting, his being so visible, well, that could mean a couple things.
Like maybe the science world is feeling particularly anxious.
Could be. Or maybe, like you said, he's just an engaged local. Either way, seeing him again and again kind of anchors the observations.
So let's get into some of the specific feelings and comments reported at these parties. There were definitely contrasts.
Okay.
At the Semaphore Gala, you had Bill de Blasio, the former NYC mayor, sounding pretty positive about Democrats.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
Called it a milestone moment, said people were getting their mojo back. His girlfriend, Nomiki Konst, added that people were looking for alliances.
Interesting. So a sense of regrouping, maybe?
Yeah.
Finding allies?
Seems like it. And that Semaphore event, tied to their World Economy Summit, drew people like Wolf Blitzer, Dana Bash from CNN.
Right, a mix of finance and media types. And de Blasio's optimism. Well, it gives you a peek into how some Democrats might be feeling.
Maybe seeing the change dinner situation as a chance to rally their base?
Perhaps. But then you get the flip side. Ben Smith, Semaphore's own editor-in-chief.
He had a different take.
Yeah, he described people scanning the room for someone who can tell them what is going on.
Wow, that suggests more confusion, Bewilderment.
Definitely a sense of uncertainty. Like, okay, the landscape has changed, now what? Who has the answers?
Then, shifting gears again, you have Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. She was at an Axios event.
And she was defending the administration's handling of the media, I assume.
Uh-huh. And she directly criticized the White House Correspondents Association board.
Oh, so?
She basically said they should not dictate who gets to go into the Oval Office and who gets to ride on Air Force One.
Okay, that's blunt. That's really questioning the traditional role of the WHCA in managing press access.
It feels like a clear signal that the White House wants more direct control over who covers them and how.
Absolutely. A major break from the way things have typically worked, with the press corps having more independence in those logistics. It highlights that tension.
Meanwhile, over at the Crooked Media Happy Hour, the Pod Save America guys, they seem to be taking a different tack.
How so? Focusing on criticism.
Not exactly. John Lovett, who used to write presidential speeches, apparently emphasized being joyful and fun and entertaining and unafraid.
Okay. So less about defining themselves against Trump.
And more about building their own positive, engaging thing.
That's a strategy, right? Build your own platform, keep your audience engaged, regardless of the immediate political wins. Less reactive.
Makes sense. Then there was a party thrown by Status, a media startup. Oliver Darcy was quoted there.
What did he say?
He was pretty explicit that Trump administration officials weren't invited because, quote, they want to have people here who like the First Amendment.
Oof. Okay, drawing a clear line there.
It's very clear. And Eric Wemple from the Washington Post was there too. He called the room full of reporters a target-rich environment for gossip.
Huh? Probably true.
But he also made the point that media critics, like himself, should be at these things to observe.
That's fair. You get a sense of the dynamics. And Darcy's comment just hammers home the divide, the distrust between some media outlets and the administration.
Oh, and the food report from that party? Crab puffs and fried oysters?
Very DC, very DC.
Then you had Jen Psaki, former Biden press secretary, now at MSNBC. She was at an event honoring female journalists.
And she commented on Trump skipping the main dinner.
Yeah, she lamented his absence, saying it's important for leaders to be able to take a joke and respect critics.
That really goes to the heart of the traditional symbolism of the dinner, doesn't it? That willingness to engage, even playfully, with the press.
Her point being that showing up, even to be roasted a bit, signifies a certain respect for the press's role.
And Trump's absence, from that perspective, signals something different, a different view of that relationship.
Even CEOs were weighing in. Roger Lynch from Condé Nast saw a headline about threats to press protections.
While at the Condé Nast CA party, right?
Yeah.
Bill Nye was there too, wasn't he?
Yep, Nye strikes again. And Lynch apparently said it was absolutely the right time to party, specifically to support and protect journalists.
So framing the parties not just as social events, but as acts of solidarity.
Kind of. A statement about the importance of journalism, especially if it feels under pressure.
Underlines those anxieties about press freedom that seem to be bubbling under the surface.
But not everyone was in a partying mood, exactly. Jake Tapper from CNN sounded quite somber.
Where was he?
At a late-night party hosted by UTA, he called it an unsettled and unsettling time in journalism.
Strong words.
He even brought up the recent resignation of a 60 Minutes executive producer over independence issues.
Right, that was a big story.
And Tapper basically concluded, I'm not really sure what there is to celebrate.
Wow. That really cuts through the noise of the parties, doesn't it? Captures that deep concern about the state of the industry.
Though Senator Amy Klobuchar was also quoted, offering maybe a slightly more pragmatic view.
What did she say?
Acknowledged politicians don't always like the coverage.
Understatement of the year.
Right. But she stressed you still have to respect the press's right to do its job.
Which is that fundamental point, isn't it? Even when it's critical, the institution matters. Tapper's unease and Klobuchar's reminder kind of bookend the situation.
So let's try and wrap this up. What are the main takeaways from looking at this pre-dinner scene through the NYT's reporting?
Well, it seems clear the social stuff definitely continued, maybe even expanded. But the character of it changed.
Right. No administration presence, fewer big Hollywood names, maybe more political undertones.
Exactly. And a real mix of feelings. You had that hopefulness from de Blasio, that defiance from Caroline Leavitt, the sort of strategic focus from Pod Save America.
But also that bewilderment Ben Smith saw and the deep unease Jake Tapper voiced.
Plus that recurring theme about the First Amendment and protecting journalists coming up explicitly at some events.
It wasn't just business as usual, even if the parties were still happening.
Not at all. It felt like these social gatherings became a sort of stage where the anxieties, the shifting alliances, and the uncertain future of the media-politics relationship were playing out.
So for you listening, digging into this pre-dinner atmosphere isn't just about DC gossip. It really gives you a snapshot of the power plays and tensions at a specific moment.
Hopefully, it provides a richer backdrop for understanding the relationship between the press and government as you see it reported day to day.
It makes things feel a bit more, I don't know, three-dimensional.
Absolutely. Which leads to maybe a final thought for you to chew on.
Okay.
What does it actually mean when the White House Correspondents Dinner happens, but the White House itself isn't really participating in that traditional way?
What does that signal about how the relationship between the press and the presidency is evolving?
Yeah. Is it a temporary blip? Or does it signify a more permanent shift in how power interacts with the people who cover it? Something to think about.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Bobby doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.